On this episode of Searching for History, we're at Fort Casey on Whidbey Island in Washington State.
Fort Casey looks like it's going to be really interesting. It's another one of those forts in a triangle of fire.
And one thing I really want to check out while we're here is two disappearing guns. They're actually in position. That would be really cool to see. We're also going to look at a lighthouse called Admiralty Head Lighthouse. Come along and let's take a look at Fort Casey. When Fort Casey was built, it was among the most advanced military installations in the nation. Earlier stone and brick forts were bulky structures, often dominating a harbor entrance. The new forts of the 1890s were made of concrete and earth. They consisted of many batteries and support buildings scattered across the landscape. Many of these new steel guns were mounted on disappearing carriages. The ability to lower the gun behind the concrete wall allowed for safer loading and also making the gun more difficult to see when it was not firing. So this photo here shows the layout of the fort and where the various artillery batteries were located.
By the 1920s, advances in naval technology and the rise of air power had eroded the effectiveness of coastal forts like Fort Casey. Large guns mounted in open concrete batteries were vulnerable to these new weapons, so ultimately some forts were abandoned. Others, like Fort Casey, were kept for training. Most of the guns here were scrapped, and after World War II, the Admiralty Inlet forts were decommissioned.
So this photograph here shows a 10-inch gun at Battery Kingsbury in the firing position. Although state-of-the-art when it was first installed, fixed guns like this became obsolete with the advent of more advanced aircraft and warships. This photograph is circa 1912. This information panel is describing the Triangle of Fire, where you had three forts that together would protect this inlet, Admiralty Inlet. So if an enemy ship came down this inlet, it could be fired at from three different forts. So the Triangle of Fire consisted of Fort Worden at Port Townsend, you had Fort Flagler, and then Fort Casey where we're standing. The forts protected the U.S. Naval Shipyard at Bremerton and the cities of Puget Sound. Soldiers manned Fort Casey's 35 mounted guns to block warships from passing through Admiralty Inlet, the primary approach to the Sound. The Army's coast artillery soldiers were stationed at the fort from 1899 until 1945. So I see over there an observation bunker that I think where someone would be in there to orchestrate the firing of all the different batteries.
Mm-hmm.
What's up there?
Up there is one of those disappearing guns.
Wow. That's cool, you can actually climb up on that.
Mm-hmm. The two massive guns sitting atop Battery Worth were among the last of their kind in the world. These two guns survived in the Philippine Islands at Fort Wint, which was an American base near Manila. And that base was abandoned during World War II as Japan invaded the islands. In 1968, the guns were relocated to Fort Casey, which had become a state park in 1956.
Wow. This is pretty impressive.
It's great up here.
Well, what do you think about this disappearing gun?
This is awesome.
Yeah, it's really neat that this is still here.
Yeah, I'm glad that they have such a fine example of this disappearing gun, complete with the carriage here. Because typically you just see where the gun would have been.
Yeah, just the concrete.
So it's cool.
And then you can really see that it would be loaded when it was lowered, because there's just no way anyone could stand here and put a shell in the breech, or in the breech. I mean, in theory, I think this could still be lowered. I don't see a motor anymore. That's the only thing that's missing.
Yeah, I don't know.
But all the gears and cables and everything are still there. Yeah, I wonder how this worked. I mean, there's like a crank here, but I just can't imagine that this would be lowered by hand.
No.
Wow, that is really cool that this disappearing gun is still here. We've been at other forts and they talk about them, but they don't have any anymore. They're all, they're long gone. Okay. Do you know what this is, Erin?
What is it?
I think this is where a shell would come down, then it would roll and hit these stops. Mm-hmm. And then somehow they would then transport it over to the gun. Mm-hmm. Maybe on a cart?
Do you think they had a cart or a carriage?
Yeah.
Do you think they had tracks or wheels?
Well, they have something down here that the carriage/cart would force it into position. Battery William Worth. Okay, so this one is in the lowered position, ready to be loaded. Okay, Erin, climb in and we'll fire you.
No. I won't fit. I'm too fat.
There's something in there.
I imagine there's something in there so nobody goes in there.
No, it's like you can see through, but there's something in there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so there's a wheel on this one. Look at the pock marks in that. I think this thing took some fire.
Well, they said these two guns came out of the Philippines.
Yeah. It's a chalkboard, I guess, where they would calculate firing range. So I'm speculating that that structure there would have been where the fire for this battery was orchestrated. I think there was an elevator that would come up from the magazine and it would lift a shell, so the actual projectile shell with the powder, and then it would roll down and hit these stops and then load it onto a carriage that was then rolled over to the gun to be loaded. So this is Battery James Moore. Wow, I don't really like the fact there's like, it's just open at the bottom. Wow. Pretty impressive. Any thoughts?
It's pretty cool out here. I like it.
Have you ever been to Fort Casey?
I've been to Fort Casey when I was a kid. We did like a 5th grade trip to Camp Casey.
Okay.
But it's been a long time.
So I don't know if I can zoom in, but across Admiralty Inlet over there is Port Townsend, and then kind of the big hill with the bluff on the right is Fort Worden, and then here on the left, that island, I think it's called Marrowstone Island. That's where the other fort in the Triangle of Fire was located. Then that's the Olympic mountain range in the far background. I'm really proud of you. Normally, I would think your fear of heights would have kept you from doing something like that.
It's making me want to walk very quickly across this iron walkway here. That's rattling a lot. Back on solid concrete here.
Yeah. To be honest, I really didn't like walking across that concrete bridge, just because the railing, has 2 rungs, but then it's just open at the bottom. That's, I don't know, just made me feel like I could slip through there.
Yeah, it wasn't that bad for me.
Okay, well, good. Do you want to walk over and check out those observation
Yeah.
bunkers?
Uh-huh.
Observation towers? I don't know what you call them.
Yeah. This panel points out that this battery here, Battery Kingsbury, was converted in 1943. And the 2 emplacements here and the 3rd emplacement of Battery Moore were converted to mount 3 versatile anti-aircraft guns. These guns also offered protection against fast-moving motor torpedo boats. So here is a picture of the gun crew practicing loading the 10-inch guns.
Yeah, and here's one of these like chalkboard type things where they're putting some kind of range data. Yeah, that view is great. Another battery. I'm thinking maybe you'd call this the command center.
I don't know, maybe that panel up there will tell us.
Look, there's a smaller artillery piece right down there. Where we're standing is called the observation stations. The panel says here, these 4 unusual structures were among Fort Casey's primary observation stations. From this hill, soldiers could clearly see enemy warships far out into the Strait of Juan de Fuca. Each observer used a powerful telescope for surveillance and tracking. The observers took precise measurements of a target's position and relayed these readings to the plotting room in the lower level of the building. So apparently we're standing on the roof of where that would take place. For a time, battery commanders were also stationed here. They disliked being separated from the soldiers manning the guns, and in 1915, new plotting rooms and towers for the battery commander were built behind the main battery. So maybe that's what these individual ones are. But apparently they wanted to be closer to the guns. Looks like the blast shields are up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this looks like a good place for a Star Wars movie. Like, this could be where the Rebel Alliance is hiding out.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Battery Reuben Terman. And the Admiralty Head Lighthouse. After buying 10 acres of land from Dr. Kellogg in 1858, the lighthouse service completes construction of Red Bluff Lighthouse and lights the lamp for the first time. 1858. Fort Casey, the U.S. Army purchases land in 1897. 1903, construction of the Admiralty Head Lighthouse is completed. The Admiralty Head Lighthouse is closed after being deemed obsolete in 1922. In 1927, the Lantern House and lands are removed and installed at Dungeness Spit Lighthouse. This panel is saying it was not unusual to find women employed as keepers or assistant keepers. Georgiana and Flora Pearson both served as assistant to their father Daniel at Admiralty Head. Flora continued even after she married and gave birth to her first child in the lighthouse.
I live in that one. I haven't even been in it yet.
So the state parks restored this in the 1950s, and it actually was looking pretty sad.
Look, the lighthouse is open. Let's go in.
So see, it was restored after it was acquired in 1955. Right, so the top of the lighthouse was replaced in the 1960s. The Lantern House.
Archie Nichols suggested the project would be a great experience for the metal shop classes of the island's 3 high schools. Oh, we have to climb a ladder. Okay. Okay.
You can do it.
I don't really want to.
Come on, you can do it. It's gonna warm up here. Well, the lamp is long gone.
I feel like I shouldn't have read that this was restored by high school students right before I walked up it.
I'm sure they had supervision.
They had extensive guidance, but you know.
Wow, the view is spectacular.
Yeah, come to Fort Casey, climb the lighthouse tower.
All right, you ready to go back down?
Yeah, but you have to go first. Are you down that part?
Yep, I'm down to the next level.
Okay.
We made it.
Well, you did.
I was gonna say, he did.
It's true. I spoke too soon.
Pray for me, man.
Yeah, so in 1903, Admiralty Head Lighthouse replaced the aging Red Bluff Lighthouse. Check out the lighthouse keeper uniform.
You can give me the fort tour after you've done it.
I think I'm on to do a fort tour tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken.
Lighthouse tour.
Oh, lighthouse tour. Oh, I think so.
Okay, so here's all the lighthouses
That's it.
from British Columbia down into Puget Sound
Just a minute. I'll be right back. Just a minute.
How are you, sir?
and out on the coast. We met a state parks employee, I believe a manager, named John.
And we were chatting with him about what we enjoyed about Fort Casey and the lighthouse and the area around here. We got to talking about volunteering. We would just really encourage everyone to consider volunteering.
Well, he made a comment that they're having a hard time finding volunteers at these historic sites in the state park system.
Yeah.
And so he just was hoping we could mention that if you have the time or the inclination, that you should volunteer as a docent. And you don't have to be an expert in history. You can just learn as you go, and they're really hoping to get more volunteers.
Yeah, they provide lots of training. So really you just have to be interested and have a little bit of time.
If you have an interest in history, consider volunteering. Oh, look. There's some kind of a fighter plane going by. I don't know my fighter jet, so I couldn't tell you what that is. An F something. So what do you think about Fort Casey?
Fort Casey was really interesting. It's really beautiful out here. And it was really wonderful to see two disappearing guns, one in its upright position and one retracted.
Wow, the sound.
Really.
The sound of that jet is finally coming through.
Yeah. And we learned a little bit more about the forts in the Triangle of Fire in the Admiralty Inlet.
Fort Casey is definitely worth checking out. The disappearing guns is fascinating to see, and you can actually climb up on them, which that's pretty cool. Got more fighter jets going by. Also, while we were at Fort Casey, we went to the Admiralty Head Lighthouse, which it's a small little lighthouse right next to the fort. It's pretty cool, and if you get a chance, it's worth taking a peek. Well, that's our video on Fort Casey. I hope you enjoyed it.
Don't forget to like, share, comment, and please subscribe to Searching for History.
Thanks for watching.